Paranormal Wednesday, Josh Corey. We met Josh 3 years ago.
Oh, it's
maybe more.
Close to that, something like that, yeah.
And I think I'd heard of Flat Earth, but I'd never looked at it. And it came up on the show, and the phone rang, and it was Josh. And then he did tons of Paranormal Tuesdays with us. So Tony's crazy in. 3%, right?
I am 3%.
3% believe.
3% of me believes that the Earth is flat. That is a.
Did you watch the movie yet, Rach?
Fact.
I started watching it, and then I couldn't get into it.
Okay, I got way into it because I hated the main guy so much. What's his name?
Mark.
Was it KMOX?
Yes.
Had Mark Sargent call in.
Oh,
Mark
did he
Sargent,
really?
Yeah.
So
You hate Mark Sargent.
I do.
There's a lot of people.
But I love the topic. I really, truly love the topic.
I do too.
If I could have my choice, I want a flat Earth.
Okay.
I want Bigfoot. I want aliens. I want vampires, and I want a flat Earth. But I just can't get there.
So when we discussed this for the first time ever with Sue in the room, which was just a couple weeks ago, Sue was asking all the questions like, how does the sun work and the moon and the stars and all that? So can you just start with like a
101
Flat Earth basic.
Yeah, flat Earth
description
basic.
of the flat Earth model?
Yeah, I think I could probably do that. Well, first off, there's not a model per se.
There's a few different versions of it, right?
Everybody's got a really cool idea of what it could be.
Your best guess from your research of how it is.
So this is what they call an azimuthal equidistant projection.
Yes, Sue.
Well, if you're into ham
Yeah, Sue.
Oh,
how you gonna
okay.
argue that? How
Yeah.
you gonna argue that, Sue?
So far, I can't.
going to jump right in. Well, if you're at a ham radio operator, basically it just means if you look out straight in front of you in 360 degrees, then that's going to be your azimuth is just that straightforward projection. And then it just goes 360 degrees around. So that's what an azimuthal projection is, an equidistant, because it's all equally distant around. So if you put North Pole in the middle, and you have all the continents spread out around, and then the South Pole is a ring of ice. Well, at least at the beginning, what's beyond that ice, hard to say. Most people, anybody who's ever gone there, goes to the ice and then bounces off and goes somewhere else, and that's how they, quote, cross Antarctica.
There you go, Sue.
But essentially, yeah, it's an azimuthal equidistant map. North Pole in the middle, South Pole is a ring on the outside. If you want to look up the United Nations, check out their map and their logo. That is an azimuthal equidistant projection with North Pole in the middle.
I see.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, the very basic things. The curvature of the Earth.
Yep.
Okay. And like on that movie, when they sent the boat out and like, okay, once it went down, the stripes and the laser, where the laser didn't work either. That just seems to be not just accepted science, but also our experience. Like I've seen the curvature of the Earth, like in airplanes and such.
Negative. 35,000 feet. A lot of people say we've seen it from an airplane. A few years ago, there's a guy named Felix Baumgartner jumped out of a balloon at a high altitude. It was the Red Bull space jump.
Right, 100,000 feet.
It's 127,000 feet, actually. And if you look at the pictures, you can see Planet Nevada right below him. That perfect sphere, the curvature of the Earth at 127,000 feet. Now, there's a guy, Neil deGrasse Tyson. He was asked about this same jump, and he'll tell you. He said specifically, from that altitude, we are too small. If it's a beach ball, say the edge of space is like a half inch above it. Where Felix jumped was 2 millimeters above that beach ball Earth. So there is no way he was at the edge of space, because at 127,000 feet, that stuff is flat. And that's his quote. That stuff is flat at 127,000 feet. And that's just from your basic
So we think we've seen the
astrophysicist.
curvature, but we haven't.
Correct.
What about the tests like the water, the boat in the water, and more importantly, the laser?
Ooh. Yeah, see, this is where it gets really interesting in how light works when it passes through a lens, whether that lens is your eyeball, whether that lens is a camera, whether that lens is a telescope. Things will always, consistently, necessarily disappear from the bottom up. Flat plane, spherical Earth, doesn't matter. Because of the way that light enters your eye, once it gets to the edge of your horizon, the horizon as far as you can see, the light between the object and the horizon will just start to merge, and that object will disappear from the bottom up until you just can't see it anymore. Put a camera on a table and roll a coin across the table and watch what that coin does. That coin will disappear from the bottom up. Doesn't mean the table's a ball or even a spherical curvature. That's just the way light works.
So the big question, why? Why the conspiracy? Like, who gains?
Well, you can't even say it's necessarily so much as a huge conspiracy where everyone is lying. Your basic university professor, I don't think, is lying. I don't think they've never even thought to question it.
They're teaching what they were taught.
Exactly.
And what about the astronauts? So they're lying. They're flat out lying.
Well, we can sort of show that. We can show them in the ISS where they're green screening out the harnesses where they'll start to flip around because they're on a harness. So one of the other astronauts will grab the wire to keep them from coming out of frame and pull them back in. But then the wire's been green screened out so you can't see it. They'll be playing with tools, and a tool will fall and land on the ground.
So I get why a college professor wouldn't know, but why isn't and doesn't realize they're lying? Why? What's in it for NASA to lie?
What's in it for NASA? On a daily basis, $50 million every single day, 365 days a year. This year alone,
so they just want to keep the business going.
$50 million
because they're out of business if there is no space as we know it, and there's no globe, Earth, NASA's out of business, and so is all their funding.
Yep, if that sky is just a fractal where you can zoom infinitely on whatever is up there, the lights in the sky. If it's a fractal nature and you can just keep zooming, and there's no way to ever prove a distance.
Do you think it started as a belief? Like NASA, when they went into it, they went into it for all the right, honest reasons, that they really thought it was a globe and we're going to get, but then once they realized they were wrong, they went, okay, we're wrong, but we're not ready to admit it, so we're just going to keep this going. Or was it all started as a conspiracy?
You could probably find some pretty good evidence to say it was started as a conspiracy. Even Universal Pictures, I think, from Jump Street had a globe as their logo for their intros in any of their movies, long before anybody could have made it to space to see what the actual shape is. They just assumed it was a ball, which is the whole pretense for this entire heliocentric model, is the assumption first that it's a ball, and then you just make the math work after that.
So all of us can see the moon with our naked eye, and if you just get a dime store telescope, you can really see the features on the moon. What's your best guess, if you don't believe that it's another sphere that orbits the Earth, what do you think that is?
So my best guess, as far as I don't have any idea, but let's just pull something out of my rear end. I would have to say it's holographic in nature. What we're seeing isn't necessarily there in the sky. So there's an apparent moon and an actual moon. What we see is an apparent moon. Same with the sun. We see an apparent sun in the sky, but it's not necessarily the actual sun that we see. The actual sun would be somewhere else. That's like a straw. You put a straw in water, and the water diffracts the straw, and you can see it bend. The straw is not actually there where you're seeing it. The light has been bent, and it's somewhere else. You have an apparent straw and an actual straw. I think it's the same thing with the sun and the moon.
But, okay. So would we have been able to see the actual sun and moon in the past, and then they've been replaced by the apparent ones? Because that seems like that would take a lot of technology to project that into the sky.
No, it wouldn't. You can do it analog. It's called a miroscope. Imagine like a dish, like a satellite dish.
But don't we have pretty good evidence just from literature that for thousands of years we've been documenting the movement of the sun and the moon and the Earth?
It would be weird if it just appeared out of nowhere.
Just take a look at all those civilizations in the past that thought the Earth was flat and we were covered by a dome that worked out the cosmology and the lights in the sky. Yeah, we've done it for
that's what they believe.
Years. Yeah, it was originally a flat Earth. People thought it was flat. They saw it flat. They calculated it flat.
How long was it? How long ago was it that pretty much everyone believed it was a flat Earth? Because I always somehow link it to Columbus.
Well, because that's probably what a lot of people were taught in school. That's why in 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue, and he proved that the Earth it was a ball, which of course isn't true. They will say that there were people out there that thought the Earth was a flat disk in space, and they had to go prove them wrong, and that was the basis of sort of why he did that, and then sort of found the New World. I guess maybe finding it was the original basis, but just proving that it's a sphere was secondary.
If you have a question for Josh, 314-241-9797, or you can tweet us, and we'll get your question on.
And it's a whole lot of not necessarily what we can prove, because when you start digging into science and learn that science is a tool and not everything is a nail if science is a hammer. You can't just go banging around everything with science. So you learn you can't scientifically prove the shape of the Earth. You can't scientifically prove gravity. You can't prove it's round. You can't prove it's flat. But we can observe it flat. It's observably flat. Everything else has just been conditioned for you to believe otherwise.
Quick break, right back. Paranormal Wednesday. 971talk.com/DGS Live. Josh Corey is here. Let me tell you, DGS listeners love DGS Live and Flat Earth.
Heck
love
yeah.
it. Twitter exploding,
Yes.
phone calls coming in like crazy. I could say, wow, look at this. Ronald Reagan's corpse was reanimated and raped. I don't care. But Flat Earth, people just come out of the woodwork. Okay, you got a good one to start with?
I got good tweets. So Michael says, and maybe you can even explain what this is, the Coriolis effect. Is he says that is something you can experience. Ask any shooter. It pretty much proves that we're on a spinning ball.
Yeah.
Well, I would first question how he defines experience the Coriolis effect. So basically, the Coriolis effect is what they term as an apparent effect from the motion of the Earth in regards to, say, a sniper. When a sniper has to take into account, say, distance and the windage, one of the things they say he has to account for is the spin of the Earth because of the length of the time the bullet is in the air. And because the stationary target, from where he's aiming, you have to take into account where he is located and the speed of the spin of the Earth at his location and the speed of the spin of the Earth at the target's location. And then you have to take into account the spin of that Earth as your bullet travels to get to that destination. So you have to take that into account. Is basically what the Coriolis effect is. I don't know. I've talked to snipers. I've definitely seen some of the guidebooks, seen some of the training manuals that talk about it. I've never spoken to the snipers that I've spoken with. I've never met one that actually, in the midst of shooting, accounted for the Coriolis effect. Never actually had to do it.
Brad, you're up first. Go ahead.
All right.
Hey, man.
Yes. Okay. Does this guy know anything about global satellite mapping?
Yes.
Does he know anything about global satellite positioning?
Yes.
Does he know anything about how NASA had to put different radio trackers all around the globe, not just in North America? And this guy that said that we cannot scientifically map out the globe. Dude, they did this in the 60s with early deals with global satellite mapping deals that wasn't even made public until the 1980s with America, with the general public.
Well,
I used to work in the military, in intelligence and special forces. I know everything there is to know about global satellite mapping. This guy I don't know what kind of drugs he's on, David. Get him off the air.
So can you explain to the listeners about the Loran system and how that might actually tie into the GPS?
He's gone, sorry.
Oh, crap. Well, the Loran
Called
system...
him David.
He did not like you.
Yeah,
and he referred to me in my mean name.
Your Christian name.
If you'd have said David Allen, I'd have went running.
David Glover, you get this
David
man
Allen
off the
Glover,
phone.
you get Josh Corey off the air. Sorry, Mom.
Yeah, I get that a lot.
So go on. So in general, we all now have phones that tell us exactly where we are.
Again, this is the whole thing. You can totally take and put it on an azimuthal equidistant map. If you start out with a flat Earth, you can map it on a globe. If you assume that what you put out there was going to be on a globe, and that's how you build your mathematical model, guess what? At the end of that, because you assumed it as a globe at the beginning, guess how it's going to look at the end? It's going to look like that globe that you assumed to begin with. Same thing with GPS. The Loran system was a land-based navigation system, sort of communication system that was well before GPS that they were using.
So are we okay over there?
No,
You have questions?
I'm doing fine.
All right.
So if I go in a plane and fly around the world, you're saying that I'm going to run into the ice ring, right? And then I'll bounce back. Okay.
Only if you go south.
If I go south.
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, if you can go south and not run into Antarctica, I would love to find out.
Which you would do on a globe, too. If you go due south, you're going to run into ice.
Yep.
Now, from anywhere.
What you need to do is fly across it. Fly across Antarctica. So if you could be the first person in human history
Please do.
to fly across
leave
Antarctica,
now.
then we could prove the ball.
I gotcha. So the satellites that we all have and all the shots that we've seen from
you have a satellite?
satellites.
I was going to say, I don't have a satellite.
Well,
Where'd we get
okay,
those?
let's say
Obama phone.
just even, any photo you've seen from a satellite of all the round planets, and they're clearly spherical.
Yes.
The moon,
maybe not
all of
clearly.
those. So all of those are faked too.
I wouldn't say clearly spherical, but there are definitely lights in the sky. If you've ever played billiards,
Yes.
you ever seen the shape of those balls?
Uh-huh.
Spherical, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if the balls are spherical, that must mean the table is too, right?
What?
If the balls are spherical, then the table must be too.
Why?
Why indeed? So if what we see above us is spherical, why would you assume that what we're standing on
I'm
is spherical?
talking about like science sending up a satellite and showing us a satellite image of actual spherical planets and moons. So you're saying that none of that is true?
But I think, Josh,
the satellites that they're sending up, not true. Space, not true. Lights in the sky that you see, absolutely true.
Oh, so space isn't true either. Okay.
Correct. No infinite vacuum of space. We're breathing, so we can prove that there's no vacuum of space.
Okay.
Or that we're not connected. There's a dome. There's a barrier. Because we have air pressure, there's got to be a container.
But when you say that just because the heavenly bodies may be spherical, that doesn't mean that we are. But just syllogistic logic would suggest that if all of these appear to be spherical, then why would we be so special to be flat?
How much life have we found on those other spherical lights in the sky?
So maybe life only develops in flat.
Well, again, if there's no life up there, then there must not be life here, and this is all just a dream.
What would be the definitive proof for you?
I don't think he meant that.
That like you just said, if somebody could fly across Antarctica,
that would be definitive proof.
That would be definitive proof
for me. Yeah.
Or alien.
Why haven't we then?
Yeah,
I thought we
why
did it
haven't
all the time.
Yeah, you'd think,
yeah.
right? Yeah.
We don't?
It's a great question.
Can we go back to the South Pole? Were you saying that the South Pole
He's
is
gonna be
a ring
snarky.
around the?
Yes.
Okay. I was just making sure.
So that way, when people say like, just set your compass due west and go, and if you don't fall off the edge, then you've proven that it's not. I get how it works on this map. That would work, and you would.
Tony,
still
what's
get
your
to
thing about the airlines in general?
That's my number one thing. When I was looking into this obsessively, when you learn that all of the flight patterns, especially the ones in the southern hemisphere, don't appear to go from point A to point B in the shortest distance, unless you look at it from that whatever word you use when you talk about that map. That until you put the flat Earth map down, it doesn't look like they're going from point A to point B in the shortest ways that they could on all these flight patterns from all these different airlines, and nobody's ever answered that one. That's the one thing that I always get hung up on. It's like, why are these planes not going what looks like the shortest route? Why are they doing this zigzag stuff? Where they appear to be using so much more fuel and time. So that's the one that, and nobody can ever. I've never seen anybody.
You know what I think is going to happen? I'm going to tune into like the Riz show tomorrow morning, and they're going to have on Tony Colombo, Flat Earther.
No, listen, that's day one. That's day one. That's the one that they always get me on.
If there's an airline pilot out there or someone like an aircraft controller that could answer that for us, Taliban, would you try to get them on?
Yeah.
Hello, Joe. Go right ahead.
All right, first off, my kids hate me because I do believe in everything this guy's saying. However, where I get really tripped up, a lot of these flat Earth people have this weird conspiracy that Australia doesn't exist. And that's the one where I'm like, okay, now I might be crazy. If I'm believing in all this stuff, do I believe in that too?
Right.
I want to get his take on that.
Where did NXS come from?
That's awesome. Hey, thanks for that, Joe. That's really cool. I actually wanted to talk about this because of that and something else about flat earthers planning a cruise to the edge or something else like that. Even flat Earth is not immune to fake news. Because people want so desperately to make fun of flat Earth, they literally have to start making things up. Like, well, flat earthers just don't believe that Australia exists. Well, flat earthers are actually planning a cruise to the edge to prove that the Earth is flat, none of which is happening.
Why wouldn't you?
Why wouldn't we what?
Take a cruise to the edge.
To Antarctica? I mean, we can.
Just to the edge. Any of them, right? Isn't it all the way around us?
Well, we can. It costs a lot of money to go to Antarctica.
Yeah.
It totally does. But you're going to be totally controlled. You don't get to just go to Antarctica and explore.
Yeah.
You're guided. You're led. There's so many rules.
That's another thing.
The Antarctic Treaty.
That's another thing that I always get hung up on.
The Antarctic Treaty that's been signed by every
Wait a minute.
single country.
Why do we have to go to Antarctica? I thought you said the whole thing is surrounded by ice.
Yeah,
Because if you could go across you could get across, if you could do the other side, then you would prove him wrong.
Because flat Earth theory, Antarctica
All you
basically
have to
surrounds us on a ring.
Like a pond.
I get you.
All you have to do is get to Antarctica and go across it, and it would prove the flat Earth wrong. But he's right about that. It's the only thing that every government on the planet has agreed on, that you can't just go to Antarctica and go across it. You have to get permission from governments to go to. Why is that?
That's a little
Isn't
weird.
that territorial rather than?
Well, I mean,
But why did
it has been divided, but there's not really. It's just a
Name me
99-year treaty.
Show
that
me
they
one
signed.
other thing that every government agrees on.
Mm-hmm.
It's just weird.
I have a question from Facebook before we go to break. So Tim from Facebook asked, how do we explain the length or shortness of daylight in Alaska if the Earth is flat?
Oh, that's a good question.
That is good because that's in the north. That's right there. So if you imagine that the sun and the moon, again, we have no idea. We're working on trying to map some of this out, just using people tracking the sun and the moon. But if you imagine the Tropic of Cancer and the Tropic of Capricorn being the limits, and as the sun goes around the Earth, it moves from the Tropic of Cancer to the Tropic of Capricorn, and that sort of will help give seasons and the different temperatures. So there's just different ways, the times, the speeds, and the locations of the sun. I think it's an elliptical orbit, not a perfectly round orbit. I mean, there's lots of things that we're still looking at. A lot of very smart
When
people.
we come back, I have Shane, who is a pilot, who can answer Tony's questions, and
Yes.
I
Yay.
want Josh
Yes.
to tell me what he thinks is on the bottom of the flat Earth. Quick break, right back. Okay, Josh Corey is here, back with us. He's been on for years and years, believes in the flat Earth. Shane is an airline pilot. Shane, go ahead.
Hey, afternoon, guys. Can I just first say that I love listening to you guys on my way home. You're all hilarious, and it sounds like you have such a great time at work.
Well, thank you, buddy. We
Thank
appreciate you keeping us safe in the air.
So
Thank
nice.
you. Yes. Thank you.
Absolutely. So, so to answer Tony's question, why the planes don't seem to travel in a straight line from point to point, it's called Great Circle Route steering, and it's actually one of the things that actually proves that the Earth is round. So for example, if I'm flying from Northern California to England, which I've done before, on one leg, you'll notice that you go actually really far north. If you were to look at it on a globe and draw a straight line from California to England, you will actually fly really, really far north in order to get there. It's not a straight line, and that actually is the shortest point between shortest route between 2 points. Is basically in an arc, and you'll see that ships at sea do Great Circle Route steering.
Can you repeat that?
In the ocean as well.
Shane, can you say that the last part one more time? You cut out there.
Oh yeah, sorry. So the ships at sea also do the same thing. There's actually like highways in the sea called shipping lanes, and they will actually do Great Circle Route steering as well. And it saves on fuel, it saves on time, and it actually is when you're traveling across the surface of a sphere, and the Earth is not a perfect sphere, but when you're traveling across a spherical object, the shortest point is actually shortest route is actually an arc.
And Shane, the phone screener said that you have been above the curvature.
Yeah, so I was a high altitude reconnaissance pilot, still in the Air Force, but so I flew over 70,000 feet almost every single time I went up, and while the curvature of the Earth isn't really that detectable until you get just a little over 60,000 feet, and then it becomes really, really clear, the curvature of the Earth. And then of course other things like the sky becomes really, really dark, even though the sun is out shining. But yeah, it was pretty good view, pretty good office view.
Josh, any questions for Shane?
I bet that was one hell of a view. That's awesome.
It was. I do miss it.
So if Neil deGrasse Tyson, just a lowly little astrophysicist, is saying we can't see the curvature at 127,000 feet, if we're sending balloons up with cameras on it showing perfectly flat and level Earth at 120,000 feet, how is it you're seeing curvature at half that distance?
Oh, I've got pictures from 70,000 feet on above that do clearly show the curvature of the Earth, and you can actually make it out with your eyes.
And we are sure this is not necessarily, say, the curvature of the airplane, of the window of the airplane, right? Because they're all curved too, or the barrel distortion from the lens in the camera, because that will definitely give you some curvature falsely, like
Sure.
a fisheye lens.
You're right. No, this is with the naked eye, and like I said, the higher you go, the more defined it gets. And you really can't tell that there's too much of a curve until really about the mid-60s.
So, Shane, what about the point that Josh and his protege, Tony, were talking about no one has ever flown across Antarctica? Is that true?
I wouldn't think so. I mean, I know that we do missions to and around the South Pole all the time.
But it would have to be a single straight line.
One of the missions of the job I do right now.
Okay. Thank you, Shane. Appreciate your service, man.
So to get across Antarctica, we're looking for a single straight line. It wouldn't be go to Antarctica, veer off in some strange direction, and shoot back out. We want hit the coast, go in one direct line, and come out on the other side. That has not been done across the middle.
I know that you don't know what's on the bottom of a flat Earth, but what do you visualize?
I don't even really visualize anything. When I visualize it, what really pops into my mind is that gobstopper that I was taught in school, with the liquid iron core that gives us our magnetosphere that makes everything happen. It was really strange because the Curie temperature of when metal can hold a magnetic charge, the liquid iron in the Earth's core is way beyond the Curie temperature that would hold the magnetic charge, but that's neither here nor there. Right, the damn Curie temperature.
Forgot about that.
But human beings have only drilled 8 miles down. That's the furthest any human being has ever been, 12 kilometers. So what's underneath the Earth, and who
Tony
knows?
Was there.
We have no idea how deep it is, let alone what's on the other side.
Opening up a whole can of worms here. What about Hollow Earth? Have you looked into that much?
Love it. Yeah, that was the first thing I was really into when I got into conspiracies. Was I was into the Hollow Earth, and I read some of Admiral Byrd's stuff and saw videos and pictures of holes at the poles and stories of weird creatures and the second sun in the center and all kinds of really neat stuff.
God, I'd love that.
Yeah,
I really would. I prefer it.
Yeah,
works on a flat Earth. No reason it can't happen on the flat Earth.
This is my kind of Paranormal Wednesday.
We've had a little bit of everything.
I might be 3.5%.
Oh, I think you may be more like 30.
You're sounding like you're, like 50%.
Yeah.
That's all it takes.
You're being really disparaging and snarky to Sue Thomas. That's your first step. Josh, you want people to find you?
Yeah. TFR Live every Tuesday and Friday mornings from 4 a.m. to 6 a.m. in the mornings. And then over at every single Friday on YouTube, we have a Have No Sphere podcast at 4 p.m.
Very nice.
Everywhere.